Welcome to the service clinic at Low Country Harley-Davidson. I'm Doc Harley. Well, we've been doing our customizing a FL 2011, and one of the previous videos we talked about how to remove the gas gauge in the tank, and of course I got a response back saying, well, what about the guts inside the gas tank, and how do you take that out? Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that, but I really want to start stressing about when you're dealing with a gas tank, of course you're dealing with gas, all right? It's dangerous, all right? So I'm going to give you a few technical tips, but really if you want to take this gas tank apart, bring it to Low Country Harley-Davidson. Let us professionally take care of it, and I'll show you a couple of reasons why. All right, if you're going to remove items that are inside the gas tank, one of the things you'll want to do is run your gas as low as possible, all right? And on the modern motorcycles, it shows you when you're on reserve, and it says you've got about 30 miles, so I would go 25 miles. Get as much gas out of the fuel tank. All right, the next thing Harley-Davidson says is to take your side cover off, a dresser, all right, and you have the fuse box. In the fuse box, you'll have one fuse that is the fuel pump, all right. Take that fuse out, then you run your motorcycle, all right. It's going to run for just a little bit until the fuel pump, of course, is not supplying any more fuel. The reason you do that is because the connection at the fuel tank has pressure. It has 58 psi on it, okay? And if you don't relieve that pressure, the minute you pop that apart, you're going to get sprayed with a whole shower full of gasoline. So you run the motorcycle till it dies, and then run it about 3 more seconds, all right? Hit that starter, okay? There, you've got all the fuel out of the fuel lines. You can disconnect the fuel tank, and you don't have that. The second thing you want to do is disconnect the battery or take the main fuse out, all right? Let's not have any electrical sparks while we're playing with this. All right, so I've told you about get as much fuel out as possible, stop the fuel from getting through the connections, so we've got that kind of safety tip on it. All right, let's go with the next thing. All right, removing this, of course, your key, and you got your gas cap. First of all, you have a small little Allen up front, and you have a small little bolt in the back. That's what holds this piece on. All right, the easiest way to get to this one, which is on the other side of this switch, is turn your ignition switch halfway between off and lock. All right, that gives you enough distance to use a 5/32 ball Allen to get there. Now here's a little tip that I've learned the hard way. Put some cloth on the back side of this, okay? Because the minute you take this Allen out, old demons or whatever, we're going to take this and going to drop it, and it's hard to find. If you put a piece of cloth there, at least you've got something to catch. So, little Allen taken out with a 5/32 ball Allen up front, and then in the back, you've got a bolt. All right, so now I disconnect the cap, and I lift up. All right, now me, I don't want anything fumes or whatever, so I put that back on here. You've got 2 connections here. You've got your connection here that has to do with the fuel pump and the fuel sending unit and all that, and then you have your hose for your breather. All right, now I can just lay this down out of the way. You can pull all the wires up and disconnect it, but I just lay it down. Now here's the other reason to have a professional do this. You have this mechanism here. This holds, locks everything. There's an O-ring seal underneath this, but there are 4 points that this is locked down. Here's the Harley-Davidson tool to undo this thing, all right? This thing weighs close to 3 pounds. It is heavy duty because it fits on the tangs. Now, you see these sharp edges, and you see how heavy this thing is. There's a lot of pressure holding this down and holding it together. So, get yourself an old towel, a thick old towel, because if this tool can do it, it will sure try to come off and take a piece of your tank with it. Now, Snap-on sells a plastic one, and it works pretty good. I'd say 80% of the time, unless you get a bike that has over 30,000 miles on it, and that's a lot of corrosion and a lot of stiffness, okay? So, this can be, and I do suggest this, a 2-man team thing, because I want a second guy over here to kind of hold this and hold. And as you can see, I still have the tank connected to the frame because that's holding the tank because there's a lot of pressure on this, okay? But I have a second guy hold this, and then you pull. That's all it takes, but there's a lot of pull there. All right? Big heavy-duty piece, and I doubt you have this at your house. Now, I have seen a few home videos where somebody's taken a punch and tried to punch this around. Not a real great idea. All right, one, you're ruining this piece. Second, the punch can go and scratch your tank. A reason why you bring your bike to Low Country Harley-Davidson is because we have the proper tools and we know the way to do this. All right, so now that I've got this piece undone, at least I thought I did. Yep, it's just stuck from corrosion. It is labeled. It's hard to see, but the label on here says top. Got to put it back this side up when you're going. That's why they labeled it. It fits in there a certain way. All right, so now you can wiggle this because you got a little O-ring. And now you've got resistance. All right, I'll have my cameraman come a little bit closer. This is what you see. All right, here's the fuel filter, here's the fuel regulator, here's two fuel lines, and inside here, I'm going to try something for the first time and let's see if this works. I've got my borescope here. Let's see if we can turn this on and see. All right, we got a whole bunch of stuff in here. All right, down in this corner, down low, we've got the fuel filter. And over here we've got the connection for the fuel gauge, and over here we've got the return lines. There's a whole lot of stuff here, all right, and you've got a very little area to work. So that's another reason for Low Country Harley-Davidson to do this. But if you really want to see how this stuff fits in there, I've got one apart. Let's go to the table and let's show you the parts. All right, we're at the table. And here are the parts taken out of the gas tank, and yes, it's a hole this big and I had to get all this out. All right. Okay, what you saw when we left you was this sticking out. This is the fuel filter and this is the regulator, and we have two hoses. One of the hoses goes to your connector underneath the tank. All right, that's coming through, and the other hose goes to your filter area, and then we have wires that go over here to our fuel sending unit. Okay, now the first thing you'll want to do is to get these two hoses off. There are two clips. It's actually one clip, but there's two pieces part of it. Take your pick or a screwdriver and push them in. All right? Push them in. That will release so you can pull it apart. All right, now there are two different sizes. So if you get, forgetful after you've gotten your tank back 3 months later after the painter has finally painted it, you're going, okay, which one goes to which one? No, there's one small, one large, can only go in one way. Now I like putting just a little bit of grease, tiny bit, because there's an O-ring inside here and it'll try to fight you when it's dried to go back on. But you put a little grease, then you push until you hear a click. When it clicks, it's on there, it's not gonna come off. Now you can't pull on it because you've got that 3-inch hole that you can't get your both hands into. So trust me, when you hear the click, and you'll hear the click when you're pulling this and this in so you can pull it apart. Okay? So that's the two things you're gonna need to get this out. Now, I hope my film guy can see, on these two units, there are two attachment areas. This one's in front, this one's in back, and they look like that when you look straight down on the tank. What you want to do is lift, pull this one back, lift this, push it forward. The metal tangs that are built into the tank will let these slide out. All right? This will come out first. Be very careful. This is the fuel gauge, and this floats in the fuel and tells you how much fuel you got in it. If you go start moving around and start bending this, you're going to get a different reading, and you may have more fuel in your fuel tank than you think you have because of the way this is. It's very fragile on this end of it. So you'll want to and what I usually do is get this undone, come in and twist. and come on out. All right. This one's a little bit harder because you're on the flat side of the fuel tank. All right. But it's also a twisting moment. The minute I've undone this comes out, and as I'm lifting, I twist, and it will come out. And that's the same way it goes back in. And then you slide this in and slide the other. It's a lot to deal with, all right? But if you want to, you can do it. Just be very, very careful. What I suggest is bring it to Low Country Harley-Davidson, all right? Let us take the guts out. You get the gas tank, go to your painter, have it painted, bring it back. We put it in careful where we're not scratching, because that sure breaks your heart. After you get your tank fully painted and you start putting this stuff in and scratch. You didn't want that to happen. That's why we're here. Low Country Harley-Davidson will take care of the insides of your fuel tank, and it's the greatest opportunity at that time to take this and replace it. At 25,000 miles, well, maybe you've got less or more. There's a filter in there. Why don't you replace it now? And you've got more riding time instead of stopping and having to replace this. And you have to replace it correctly, because if you don't put this together right, what holds it together will pop out and you'll lose all your fuel pressure. That's another reason Low Country Harley-Davidson offers this to you. A simple tech tip: we hope to help you with your customizing, and we want everything to work out right. Please be careful if you're working with your fuel tank. There is fuel and it can be dangerous. Let us professionals take care of it. I'm Doc Harley. We'll see you next week.